Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Your Abundance Podcast. I'm Erin, and welcome. It's 3:33 on the clock, and last month I was speaking about numbers, and it's taken this long to come back and further put input out into the world around creating your abundance, feeling abundance, and really elevating your level of consciousness, because that's what we're here for and that's what we're here to do. And that's why we're on this journey, because an abundance journey is a spiritual journey for sure. So I have to say, I've had a lot of perfectionism the last month around putting out another podcast. It's so funny. It's the 3rd of April at 3:33 when I'm looking at this. And it's all around synchronicities, and it's all around the power of activating abundance in you and how we can do that in a better way. And I find it really, I've picked up my phone here. I'm just going to see if I can get this. While I'm recording, we do lots of content. We create B-rolls, and the two things I know that one is a block to manifesting and abundance, and the other is an opener. And perfectionism, I'm going to say, is a block. And I've really felt that this month around putting out there what I'm recording and what I'm doing and what I'm going to talk about, and being in the vibration, in the energy of it, in the having my hair done and feeling like it had to be a certain way before I could sit down and record. And it was really stopping me from putting my content out and actually just sitting down and recording. Because originally I came up with this podcast, it was really for me. We make a lot of content. We put content out all the time. We're, doing reels. I know a lot of my clients are all into marketing, being an artist, creativity. Like, we question whether that marketing, and I usually use that as a form of creativity. However, marketing in a traditional sense is for others. Like, it's for others. It's to put content out for other people. Whereas when we're actually doing recording things that are true to our heart and that are coming from a space of, I'm very much a person who is, what's the word? They're driven. I'm driven so much by flow, and I'm driven so much by, I'm laughing as I'm recording here, I'm really moving things around. I'm getting a whole different nuance into what's coming through, but I'm driven by flow, especially. So my work, and all my work, like when I sit down with a client, I know what I need to do to get that flow of information to channel, to download. And I have a process for that, which isn't really anything, because it's so natural for me to do. It's not a process like, yes, I get dressed and I do my face and I get on camera and I sit down on a Zoom with a client, or I'm doing Voxer and it's looking a particular way. I'm laughing here. I'm trying to set up a camera at the same time as I'm talking, which is all part of this, right? We're sitting here, needs to look a particular way. It needs to look in a different sense to what it does. And perfectionism is that gets so much in the way of our creativity and the things that want to flow through us and the channels and the downloads. And being so natural at it doesn't mean I don't have those nuances where that it gets in the way. My mind is like everybody else's, and we have so many aspects that block us in our subconscious, in the people around us, in who's at our energy field at the time. And so it's really, how do we develop this space and consciousness that allows, like, God to flow through you, basically. And abundance consciousness, to me, is very much that. The more in flow I am, the better. And it's where the magic happens within me. Now, recently, I heard the best thing. It was that money is obviously the physical aspect. I think I was actually listening to a podcast from Joanna, who was in my first podcast, Joanna Hunter, and she was talking about Skylar's download around duality. And we talk about duality in that we live in a dual world. There are things on a spectrum. There's a balance of everything, but there's also the balance of energy, physical to energy. And I hadn't thought of this in this way before, but she was talking about how money is the physical of the energy of magic. And it was, I think I heard it on, what day was it? I was driving and listening to podcast Saturday, and it's now Wednesday. So it's taken all this time. I've had so many clearings because of this one drop of information. But magician, and I've had lots of coaches talk about this, and I also teach magic consciousness myself. Like I talk about magic and playing in magic and what it can do from you. But understanding that the energy of magic is the duality of money in the physical. So the energy of magic is the duality of money in the physical. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, oh my God, like that's just wild, which transformed everything. Like I was sending money on the internet, and I was just like, oh my God, how magical is it? You just press that button and the money just floats from there to another account. Like I was just like so excited, and I felt that childlike magic. We call it the magical child, the inner child that's doesn't have the traumas or the wounds or the stuff. And they just think in magic. And we can actually tap into the adult magician, and that's just as powerful. But for me, the thing that was stopping my magician, which is where I do my magic, which is the magic, the flow of magic is literally going to give you more money. It's going to give you more abundance. It's the flow of magic. And that's what I do, is how you get those incoming magnetism. You get that thing that lights you up that says, yes, this is amazing. And so today I was unpacking some things around the magician consciousness, and that appeared around, I was unpacking perfectionism about sitting down and doing this podcast. And I just had this block all month. I was like, what is going on? And it was this whole thing of I have to sit down, I have to do my hair, I have to get myself ready. And I was like, who am I doing this podcast for when I'm doing it in that way? And it was like, it felt like it was a marketing thing. Whereas the reason I started it was so easy that our mind hooks into things in an ego sense. Like, how can I make this perfect? How can I bring my perfectionism into this in an unconscious way? Was how do I make myself like, and it's not make myself, but how do I disconnect from the perfection and make this into something else? And it was really stop sitting down, stop overthinking it, which is a thing. But it's also, if I'm doing this for me, I always talk about, where did you put yourself first? For me, for you, for us, is one of my other coaches' lines, Melanie. And what she talks about is for me, for you, for us. And I was like, yeah, I get the concept, but I didn't actually understand until I was doing my own 5 stages of empowerment, which takes you through the motion codes, takes you through the vibrations of energy and how we access that through our manifesting. And at what point are we accessing that in our manifesting? And how do we use that in our emotions to try to move energy, which is what happens. People who shame others to get power. People who are angry use anger to get people to move. We use different energies to get movement and to get the energy to get, it's like a momentum. So for me, it was about releasing this heavy thing that kept coming over me. And that took a systemic constellation for myself that was around a wounded father wound, which was not my father. It was never made sense to me as to why, but it was there. And because my dad, he showed up, he was there. He was the breadwinner. He always supported us. He took me to my tennis games. Yeah, he wasn't physically there all the time because he was at work, but when I looked at the unavailability of the men that I attracted, I was like, they're not mirroring this. And I kept getting told it was about unavailability by previous constellation trainers. And then it wasn't until I tapped into my own facilitator to facilitate for myself that I saw the nuance, which was on Sunday, we were at my parents' house and my mum showed me this piece of paper, and it was a piece of paper about my dad getting a letter from the government saying that he had not been chosen in the ballot to join for consignment for the Vietnam War. And the impact of that just landed when I was looking at this energy of heavy stuckness, hopelessness, shame. I was like, oh, wow. So when we do systemic work, we're offering looking at there's hidden loyalties, but also hidden emotions. So you can be hidden guilt that's not conscious to really anybody. It's just patterns playing out because of this unconscious like game of chance, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about with magic. There's a lot of things around synchronicities and signs and really believing that things are done for us, which they are, and imagining getting that letter saying you're not going to war and then getting a letter and saying you are, like that is complete fate, right? So in constellations, we talk a lot about fate, of what's fated to people, and then how much of we clean up around our fate and the fate that's come before us to how we choose to move forward in our destiny. So when I heard this thing, it wasn't until 2 days later when I was unpacking this weird emotion I had around, I had this, I completely abuselessly forgot a coaching call with my coach, and it was a mastermind, and I was like, wow. And I could hear myself talk. It was really like deeply despaired. Like it wasn't good. And I was like, where is this coming from? And when I looked at it, I was like, is this abandonment? Is this inadequacy? And it really came back to inadequacy, which is where perfectionism comes from. And this inadequacy was sitting in my father wound. It was a father, when we look at father wound, it's either inadequacy or abandonment. But the inadequacy was originally there was energy there that you weren't adequate enough to be to be consigned to war, but also that you actually didn't have a choice. So this guilt, a survivor guilt energy was there, that we won the lottery when my dad wasn't chosen, because our lives, we may not even exist. This is the irony of this. Wow. Like this one piece of paper that I saw changed the perfection inadequacy that I kept feeling, even though it made no sense to me. I was like, where is this coming from? And it was the deep underlying need to be seeing and need to see the people who were chosen, whether that's a loss, because that's what I kept feeling, like this deep despair of loss. And then there's also the win where you weren't chosen. The other way you could look at it was, I'm loyal to my country, I was chosen, and I didn't bail, I didn't desert those who weren't chosen, even though they didn't have a choice about that. It was still a level of, you didn't serve your country, who are you? But there was this whole energy around it, and it was all around the men who passed, the men who didn't have the same fate, the children that weren't born because of that war, the people who lost husbands and fathers, and this happens in all war. And so there was this like underlying survivor guilt, which was leading to this inadequacy. And it's really interesting because I could see it play out in my life, and how I could see as a constellation facilitator, there's this thing called symptom bearing. And I used to bear that cross for a really long time until I decided enough was enough. But the bearing of the cross is like my idea was that I had to put up with the crosses that I had been given. And it was through that this is my cross to bear. I got chosen. There's no choice. I didn't get a choice. And yes, there could be desertion, but there's also this energy of like completely mind-blowing of honoring these people, honoring the people who passed, honoring the people who died in this experience, honoring the people who weren't as blessed as we were, but also then because of that, not allowing ourselves to fully have everything that we possibly could have in that. And that's where we do the disservice, funny enough, in the word disservice, we do a disservice to our lineage and to the line and to how things come about, because there is an honoring of the fate. Everybody has their own karma, everybody has a fate, but family systems have them, we all have them, and they honoring what came before and honoring your own. Like for me, this is also played out in relationship, because for some reason I couldn't work out why I attracted men who skirted their responsibility, because that's what it looked like. Men skirted their responsibility because they weren't chosen. Oh, you skirted out of that, you got out of that. And I think they brought in the ballots to reduce that. Not everyone needed to go. They still needed people to run the country. There's a whole heap of reasons why the government would choose to do that, as opposed to, hey, everyone just sign up, because there is that nuance of energy around people's personal choice, their will, their desire, their loyalties. However, even when you don't have choice, there is a level of fate, but there's no victim in the choice. It just is. It's a very interesting nuance when you're looking at systemic work. So here we are. I see the pattern playing out with these men who skirt or desert in all ways. And I was like, my fear of that happening again, and my fear of attracting the same thing and not putting myself out there for a partner. This was on so many levels. This level of perfectionism or this inadequacy. And then all of a sudden I break free from the chains of it, because I see it in the systemic work and honor it as a whole different. It is the reason I get to be all that I want to be. It is huge. And I was about to say, I could see how it's played out with my brothers in different ways, exactly the same energies, but differently, completely differently. And so that's the different fates of how these things play out. And so then today I came back to, why haven't I been able to record these podcasts? And it came back to the perfectionism and the inadequacies, but it also came back to this magician, this game of chance. Like, this was a game of chance. Seriously, you were in a lottery ballot and they pulled your name out and you either went to war or you didn't. We won the lottery just in that. Money meant nothing after that. It was like, we got life. Now that's huge when you're talking about abundance. But when you're wanting to bring in, I work in magician consciousness all day, and I'm wanting to create and do this podcast, and I'm unable to, because I've got this block to this game of chance, because that could mean a different outcome. That could mean death. And so the reality was, I was blocking my the perfectionism was all around the trying to control the outcome. So I've sat down here, haven't done my hair, haven't done my makeup. I've just sat down to talk this through and to record this podcast for you, to lay it on the table for you to see it and me in my beautifulness, just as I am, and put it out on the table so that you can see and hear and understand the nuances that I work with, but also the incredibleness of what abundance is waiting for you. And that magician consciousness, perfectionism is one thing, magician consciousness is the key to unlocking all of those things. And to get to the magician consciousness, you want to learn about flow. And to do that, so many different nuances I can teach you in that, but also it's the flow of life. And that's systemic work. So if you're in Melbourne, Victoria, or in Australia and you want to pop down for a day, please do. We've got one coming up on the 27th of April here in Castlemaine. And then if you want to do some one-on-one work with me around this and delve a lot deeper, because there's so much work we can do around getting you in flow, being more in flow, overcoming those blocks, overcoming the consciousness that is getting in the way, and really aligning to who you really are and your abundance journey, because this is what your abundance podcast is about. Everybody's abundance journey is different. You can go and learn different manifesting techniques, but the nuances for you are what is so important. And that is where I come in. That is my gift. And I'm inviting you to come in and explore with me and play with me, because it's really a game, a big game, but I honor it so much. I feel so blessed that I get paid to play in something that I just do so naturally and I enjoy so much. And I love that. And I feel truly blessed and I feel truly honored after what I discovered in this last week that I get to be here and be this person. And so if you would like to chat, DM me. I'd love to chat if you want to have any more questions about what you've heard here today. And also, if you want to talk to me about the 5 stages of empowerment, you can jump in and watch that on my courses. You can join the systemic work. You can ask me about one-on-one. And we've also got a few group things coming up, which start in the next week. One is on purpose, which is all about getting in flow and being in your genius, which is about this natural joy that you can experience while doing your work. I have so many nuances around. I use the word nuance, a lot, because my discerner, my perfection, actually allows me to see the nuances. But I have to maintain my own and open myself up to yeses where I am sometimes a complete no, I can't do it like that. It needs to look a different way. So thank you for listening. I hope you come back. If you enjoyed this, make sure you're following us. Leave a review, because that would be spectacular. And you can follow us at Your Abundance Podcast. You can follow me at Erin Coaching on Instagram and Facebook. And I look forward to seeing you in the Facebook group. If you want to continue the conversation on Facebook, there's a Your Abundance Facebook group, podcast Facebook group, and you can join us in there as well, where I share the magic, because the magic is where it's at. Have a good one, and I'll speak to you again on the internet.